Hola. This video is video number 7. It's going to be a pretty short video because basically you have all the notes. I'm just going to quickly go over them. So the next section we're going to talk about is we're actually going to go into what happens during aerobic and anaerobic respiration. Okay, so page 6 of the notes basically just kind of gives a brief overview of aerobic versus anaerobic respiration. Okay, so basically, and some of the stuff we already know. Aerobic, obviously, aerobic, think air, think there's oxygen in air. Aerobic requires oxygen. Okay, and basically, aerobic is much more efficient. You get many more ATP out of that glucose if you do aerobic. Okay, you get like 55 to 65% of the energy, the original energy in glucose if you do aerobic, versus anaerobic, you only get 5%. So this is much more efficient. Okay, most organisms do aerobic. The only ones that don't are some bacteria and some fungi like yeast. They cannot do aerobic, but almost all other organisms do aerobic. So pretty much all animals, all plants, protists. Again, the only ones that don't are some bacteria, not all bacteria, and some fungi, but again, not all fungi. Okay, and aerobic occurs in the mitochondria. So we're going to dive into a lot more detail about both of these, but these are the general things for aerobic. So oxygen's required. It's much more efficient. You may want to write down 55 to 65% of the energy in glucose is released, and basically made in the ATP. Most organisms do this, and it occurs in the mitochondria. Okay, so then anaerobic. Anaerobic, obviously, the main difference is there's no oxygen. Okay, only some bacteria and yeast only do it. Okay, don't get confused by this. So some bacteria and yeast, which is a type of fungus, they only do anaerobic, which means they never do aerobic. Okay, the next sentence there says all organisms can do it. Even organisms that do aerobic can do anaerobic to help. So they always have to do aerobic, but there's certain times maybe where they can't get enough oxygen. They can do anaerobic to help. Okay, so only bacteria and yeast only do anaerobic, but all organisms can do anaerobic to help. Not to survive on it. Most organisms cannot survive on anaerobic, only these guys can, but most organisms can use it to help if needed. That's why when we work out, that's why our muscles hurt, because we actually do aerobic and anaerobic when we work out. Okay, when basically we can't get enough oxygen to our muscle cells. Okay, anaerobic happens in the cytoplasm, so it literally just happens kind of floating around in the fluid inside of the cell. And anaerobic only releases 5% of the energy in glucose. So this is not very efficient. So 5% versus 55 to 65%. Okay, and then just a few other terms. Organisms that have to do aerobic all the time, which is almost all organisms on Earth, except for some bacteria and some yeast. They are called obligate aerobes. Obligate means they have to. Aerobe means that they need to do aerobic respiration. Okay, and then organisms that only do anaerobic, which are, again, some bacteria, not all, and some fungi, such as yeast. They are called obligate anaerobes, which means that they have to do anaerobic at all times, and that's all that they can do. Okay, and then some organisms, and this is not us, even though we can do both, we can't only rely on anaerobic. So some organisms, depending on how their environment is, they can actually switch to only relying between anaerobic and only relying between aerobic. There's different types of bacteria that can kind of do this. So those types of organisms, those are facultative anaerobes, which means they can basically do anaerobic if necessary and rely only on anaerobic. So that's the difference between, that is not us. We are obligate aerobes because we have to do aerobic all the time. We sometimes can do anaerobic along with aerobic, but we must do aerobic all the time. Whereas a facultative anaerobe, basically they can switch between and rely only on one or the other. Okay, so that's basically it for this video. Really short. Please just look over it. I might not have hit everything in the notes. The next video is going to start talking about the actual process of anaerobic respiration, and then some videos after that we're going to talk about what actually happens during aerobic. Alright, so peace out, and stay tuned for next video.